All right, let's bring in Jamie McLennan this morning. And Noodles, we appreciate the time once again. How you doing, my man? How's this Wednesday treating you so far?
Not too bad. Very busy as usual. Never stops. I feel like I'm just limping to the end. I'm done July 1st at 6:55 p.m., but nobody's counting. So put it that way.
That's not too bad. Yeah.
But yeah, it's all good.
What's your summer schedule like with overdrive and stuff, though? Do you get to take some time away from there too, or what do you do?
Yeah, about 8 weeks off. We take the summers off, so it's basically full summer off. Hayes takes time off. As you know, radio is kind of a wasteland in the summer because everybody's at the lake and everybody's busy. So that's kind of when we take our holidays. So it'll be nice, a little travel. I'll make it out to Stampede. I'll make it to Edmonton, and I'll also make it to Italy. So
that's the boot. That's a great summer. I get to go to Winnipeg and Regina for the next 5 days. So a little bit of a different story, but that's okay. All right, Noodles, we got a couple things to get to on the Oilers. We'll hit on this Hall of Fame class a little bit as well. If you're watching on YouTube right now, please sub to the channel. Connor McDavid is meeting with Jackson and Bowman out in Ontario, and Rashog reported yesterday that they're not talking numbers, they're just talking overall direction of the organization as they try to convince him to sign on for 3, 4, 5, maybe 8 more years. We were just talking, like, the numbers thing is like Connor McDavid will probably get whatever he wants. So what do you think Connor McDavid wants to hear from Jackson and Bowman right now?
I think he just wants to hear a clear vision as to, what is the plan moving forward? Who are the players that you covet? What is the changes you're going to be able to implement? I mean, it was pretty clear. And I think this is why things kind of sent a stir when Connor was asked, about his contract extension. He said, I want to see if we're in a window to compete every year type of thing, what type of changes. I'm paraphrasing, but I think we all got the same messaging. It's like, hey, we made it to the dance. We made it to the finals with the group we have. I think you can identify a few weaknesses that have to be circled and dealt with. And I think that's where he's saying the length of the contract, my commitment to the organization. I put in a lot of years here, but I also need to feel like we're still heading and progressing in a direction that can get us the Stanley Cup and maybe multiple cups if you make the right moves. So I think it's more about a relationship thing. I don't think it's a shot at the, city of Edmonton or anything. I believe that, Connor and his wife are very entrenched in the community. It's more about, what does this team look like, not only this year coming up, but for years to come? What type of moves, what type of flexibility are you going to have to continue to make your team better and be progressive? So I think Stan Bowman was pretty blunt, saying, I like our D, but we're going to take a look at our goaltending. We're going to take a look at our forwards. Well, when you say you're taking a look at your goaltending, it's not like you're dealing with 8 people or your forward group is 14. You're looking at 2 guys, and really you're only circling one guy because, Calvin Pickard at $850,000 could be probably the best bargain in the league. I believe that's his salary, right? I think it's $1 million or $850,000.
Yeah, he barely makes anything. I mean, it's like a non-factor essentially. Yeah.
So 7-1 in the playoffs and 22 wins in the regular season. You're getting more than value for what he brings. It's more about, what are you doing with Stuart Skinner and the thought process there. So I think these are the types of conversations you have with your top players, not just Connor McDavid, but you've made Leon Draisaitl made an 8-year commitment to them. I'm sure he'll want some answers as well. And guys who have long-term deals that are part of the core, you want to hear what the manager and what the organization has to say, what their thought process moving forward is.
Lots of fronts to attack for the management. We know we just talked about the McDavid thing. You mentioned goaltending, Noodles. And I just wanted your thoughts there too. The free agent list isn't extremely sexy. We've heard about, Bill Zito in the past taking big swings with his organization, and we've seen where that's taken him. So, I mean, when it comes to goaltending, do you see a free agent? Do you see a big swing trade, or do you just see them running it back again, which, I mean, to some fans may not be as quenching as, I guess, going out and getting a new name and change for change's sake?
I don't see an avenue where they run it back again. I just don't. If you take a look at it, and yes, they made it to the finals, game 6 this past year, game 7 last year, but your starting goaltender had to have resets. Like that's, it's not like it was a one-off last year in the Vancouver series. Now it's another situation where it's LA, into Vegas and then, a reset, even not a reset, but a different look in the finals. I think you do have to change that position not only for the sake of doing it, but when you're trying to be progressive, if it doesn't work, and Connor McDavid used the term, you're running up against the wall, hoping that things will change. Maybe there's not a lot of sexy names out there. You could take a big swing and see if Doug Armstrong wants to move Binnington. Probably not going to happen, depending on where he believes his team is. But, I know John Gibson's name has been kind of front and center. Like it would have to be my biggest shot against John Gibson is I think he'd spend more time with TD Forrest than he would with the team, because that guy
don't you have the numbers? Haven't you mentioned it? Like he leaves games all the time. Like it's just
19 times in the last 18 months the guy's come out of the net. Like so you're basically saying, like, yes, he's a good goaltender. I think he had good numbers last year, all of that type of stuff. But he's got 2 years left to 6.4. You're going to have to make him a $3 million goaltender or something a lot better, just to even make that work. And then do you trust that he is going to be healthy and not come out in game 5 of a Stanley Cup final, that type of stuff. That's what worries me. Injuries happen, but there's a pattern with Gibson. And then, this is going to sound crazy, but I just have to put it out there, because I'll give you an example. How did Seth Jones look in Florida? But you could ask.
Amazing in Florida. Yeah.
Right. But he didn't look that great in Columbus, and he didn't look that good in Chicago. Sometimes the grass is a little greener in a different setting. So then I start looking at goaltenders like Elvis Merzlikins. Okay, now Elvis doesn't have great numbers, and Columbus hasn't been great. Now Columbus, I would argue their goaltending was poor last year compared to how the team played. But Elvis makes 5.4. You'd have to, you'd have to find some money to get chewed on there. But a new setting, that might be a scenario where you go Skinner for Merzlikins and you have to add a sweetener to take some money. But it's just a different look. And I've talked about it as far as the style of goaltender. The guy that they acquire has to have a clean butterfly. He has to have good lateral movement. He has to have certain things that the two goaltenders don't have right now. Do you take a big swing? I know I'm getting long-winded. Do you take a big swing on Demko? Now, again, Demko's spent a lot of time on the trainer's table.
I would say this. I would rather take the injury risk on Demko than Gibson.
Yeah.
I think the upside's higher with Demko, for a year.
Well, I agree.
He's a UFA after next year, so.
I also think Demko is, at some point, if he could ever be healthy, he could win a Vezina. He's that good of a goaltender. So you're right. Like you've got Demko, Lankinen, and Sheloffs there. Sheloffs is not going to make it through waivers next year. They just won the Calder Cup. He was a big part of it. To me, I think a team will take a flyer on him if Vancouver ends up trying to stick with Demko and Lankinen. I don't think they will, because that's over $10 million, or that's $10 million in goaltending in Vancouver. Here's another crazy one. Tristan Jarry, Edmonton boy, he's played in 2 All-Star games. Like, it's not like the guy doesn't know how to play goal. He's lost his way in Pittsburgh. That team's been a train wreck defensively. Would a new setting look decent for him? And then the other one, which is very polarizing, is Carter Hart, because, there's legal ramifications, there's more moral ramifications, all of that type of stuff. But there is goaltenders out there that either can be perceived as a lateral move or an upgrade, depending on the style that they play. So that's kind of what I'm floating there, guys. And I know I got long-winded, but I think there is some solutions out there. You just have to be creative.
It's an interesting list. Some of those guys, the Demko thing's kind of intriguing if he could stay healthy. I mean, it could be a really good pickup, but We were talking about yesterday. Like it's not like the guys we just. It's not like it's a sexy list and there's like 2 or 3 franchise guys. You're just never going to find those guys. So we were talking about it on 2 guys in goal yesterday with myself, Gazzola, and Gager, and we were just throwing around there. Like if you're, and I agree with you. I think there's got to be a change, even for change, just the sake of change. But if there isn't, what about a new voice as a goaltender coach for Stuart Skinner? Like, does that actually make much of an impact if they were like, we just need somebody else to work with him and maybe try to improve some of the areas? Or is this just who he is?
No, I think it's fair to say, because if you bring a new voice in, they're going to have different thoughts, different processes, different maybe drills. So I'll give you an example. I think of, and listen, I was a goalie coach in the league, so you get to know who's good, who still needs work.
Yeah.
But I look at there's elite goaltender coaches throughout the NHL. You look at Sean Burke. Sean Burke didn't really. Again, I don't want to speak for him, but he was more in management in Arizona, and all of a sudden Vegas. I think there was talks about Berkey being an AGM in Montreal, and he was, and then all of a sudden he's the goalie coach in Vegas making a lot of money. But you look at the way that they acquired goaltenders and how they were able to flourish under Sean Burke. Now, they were big goaltenders with not a lot of movement. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
That's Aiden Hill. That was Logan Thompson. That was Robin Leonard. Guys like that there's a pattern there. So if you bring in a goaltender coach that works with big goaltenders and maximizes what they have, that could be a thought process. But again, here's my counter argument to that is they made the finals with Stuart Skinner and Pickard, but they didn't get over the hump. And I'll be honest, yes, they didn't play well in game 6, but could you gotten a save? Like, could you have gotten a save on the Reinhart goal where, yes, it was a grenade thrown by Ekholm. Bouchard takes it off the shin pad. Ekholm gets beat one-on-one. But if you watch Stuart Skinner on that play, he doesn't move once. He actually doesn't readjust his angle. He doesn't do anything. He's just kind of standing there waiting for the puck, and Reinhart shoots it around him. Like, the reaction is insane. So, and then the third goal, the team had been trapped in their zone for a full minute, and it's a muffin from the sidewall, and I don't know what happened. It hits his shoulder, and it's a wide open.
Awful. Yeah,
it's those are back-breaking plays. Now, again, I'm not saying that he cost them the Stanley Cup, he cost them the finals, all of that type of stuff. It's just something different. And, I think when you are looking at that, what worries me, and I don't know how you guys feel, but is if Pickard is the casualty out of all of this, and they go and they get rid of Pickard because you got to bring in somebody to play with Stu. And then what happens is the two of them battle, and you might have the same player back in there in game 5, game 6 type of thing if Skinner ends up pushing through, which is good. He's only 26 years old maybe, but it would basically be, hey, it's the same look, the same player there at the same time. So I don't know. I think that's more of you've got to have an internal pull. Again, the coaches know behind the scenes what they see in practice, what they see in games, how the team confidence works. But in the end, there's a big decision to be made there. And I think that's probably why Connor McDavid has, voiced his opinion saying, what are we doing here? What are we doing moving forward? Are we going to find a player to play with Leon? I think that should be a major focus too.
I'm glad you brought it back around to that, because I want to hit on Alexander Mogilny finally getting into the Hall, but back around to that conversation with McDavid, I think is interesting because yes, the cap going up significantly will help them pay for McDavid. But I would assume they sit down with Connor and say, this is where the cap's going for the next 4 years. This is the amount of money we're going to have to spend now. Like, the cap going up outside of McDavid's contract itself is the biggest thing that Bowman and Jackson have going for him, right? Like, they need to lay out a plan to McDavid to say, we're not going to blow it with the cap this time around. I mean, to me, that's the biggest thing they got going outside of also having Leon here, actually having some cap flexibility beyond this offseason and showing him a plan to use that is probably the biggest thing they've got going.
Well, spending their money wisely, right? You know, the Arvidsson deal, the Jeff Skinner deal, like those are may not seem a lot, but they add up.
That's $7 million on guys who were scratched in the Cup final, you know, like
exactly. That's my point. And to be honest, like, and this is a bad thing to say, but it's like Darnell Nurse makes 9.25 or whatever. Like that's a big contract for a guy who, if everybody's healthy, is probably your 3, right? Like 3, like that's.
Yeah, if Ekholm and Bush are healthy, then Nurse is your number 3 guy. Like,
yeah. So I mean, they're and you're gonna have to allot a lot of money for Bouchard, because regardless of what you think of him, he's a hell of a player. I think he is, and you want to have a healthy Ekholm, and you're going to have 9.25 in the 3 hole. Right. So that's a lot. And if Stan Bowman is happy with his D, then you're going to have to, I still think they can add a little bit there, but I think it's more if there's a bigger deal to be made to try and bring players in. But I would circle the goaltending, and I would circle a top 6 forward that can develop some chemistry with Leon. And I'll give you an example. Do you go, and this is, I don't know, but there's 32 teams in the NHL. It almost feels like all 32 think they can win the Cup, which is insane, because I don't feel like there's a team that's actually got a for sale sign on their lawn right now. Everyone's looking to add and to be creative. The only team I would circle is Pittsburgh. And is there Brian Rust or Raquel available that could look good playing with Leon?
Yeah, that's a guy that can just play top 6 consistently, right?
Exactly. And that's where I think it's not where you're moving people around hoping. You're like, that's a top 6 forward. And what your biggest hope is that he just has that chemistry right away. That's where you got to be creative, looking around the league and saying, I covet this player, we covet that player. And there might be thought processes. Again, you're not asking Connor, how do we build this team? What you're trying to do is say, these are the thought processes we have. And this is what we're looking to do. And if you want to be a part of this, yes. And, looking at his agent, Judd, it's not Jed, right?
Judd, yeah.
Austin Matthews signed a 4-year extension, right? So, if Connor signs a 4-year extension, it's still got 5 years of Connor McDavid after he's put in all this time. So I outside the market, people are like, oh, he's going to leave. Well, you still got 5 years. So, I mean, relax. But if he signs the full 8 and gets a huge number, he's basically saying, I'm here for my career and let's go and get some cups. But either way, I don't see a world where McDavid doesn't sign at least some form of a 4 to 8 year deal. I don't think it's going to be a 1-year extension and say, hey, let's see how this unfolds. So you just got to get it done, but they also have to lay out the vision for him.
And lastly, and nothing against the other players who got inducted yesterday, but Alexander Mogilny finally gets in to the Hall of Fame. You would have played against this guy in your career. I was always stunned year after year after year. I'm like, I don't understand why Mogilny's not getting in, but he is going in now. He had that ridiculous season the same year that Solani had a massive year. He buried 50 again a little bit later on. How dangerous was that dude offensively?
He was. You know what's weird, and I say this respectfully. Like I always talk about whiteboards, okay? On before the game, you circle the guys on the whiteboard where they're in their line. First line, you see all the names, right? He wasn't a guy that was terrifying, but what he was a guy at the end of the game. You go, oh, that guy got 2 goals and 2 assists, or goal and 2 assists. Like what he was he skated well. He had a great shot. He had great vision. I think what happens is, on the teams he played on, he might not have been in the 1 hole. He was like a 1A or a great support player. And you know what? Like my only complaint about this Hall of Fame thought process is that if you're a Hall of Famer, you should go in. There shouldn't be like, oh, only 4 people can make it in. Because I'll tell you what, I thought Carey Price got jobbed yesterday. Like that's ridiculous that Carey Price is not a first ballot Hall of Famer. And then, if Mogilny's a Hall of Famer, he should have been in when he was eligible. It's like, a couple of years ago, Rogie Vachon went in. people are like, okay, I got to Google him. The younger generation's like, who the hell's Rogie Vachon?
Yeah.
Like, if Rogie Vachon,
he wasn't a Hall of Famer for 20 years.
Yeah.
Like, he's a Hall of Famer now. Like, yeah.
But that's my only complaint, because I'm not going to sit here and kick Mogilny in the nuts or Joe Thornton and say, oh, Carey Price could have done. But what I'm saying is that if there's 5 guys that are worthy to go in, put 5 in. Who cares about the ceremony that TSN and James Duthie's gonna host? Cut the speeches by 7 minutes and say, hey, we're gonna add another person in. I've always disagreed, and I respect everybody on the committee that votes. I do believe that I was teasing because I think Jerome McGinley was the swing vote that put Mogilny in a goal scorer over the goalie, but maybe not. But I think the biggest thing is if you're Hall of Fame worthy, you should be put in. It shouldn't be like, okay, we're going to wait 18 years and maybe it's a weaker class and we find a guy who has Hall of Fame numbers and stuff him in. It's like we've all had this debate. Alex Mogilny, he's a Hall of Famer. Yes, he should have been in. He should have been in years ago. But, people are like, well, Carey Price will go in next year or the following year. It's not the point. He's a Hall of Famer. He should go in. Like, that's my point about it. Maybe I'm an old man yelling at clouds, but I just feel like I feel like if there's 5 guys that are worthy to go in, 5 should go in.
I tweeted it yesterday. I said I'm happy to see Mogilny's improved enough to get into the Hall of Fame over the last.
What did Rogie Vachon do in those?
Yeah,
years?
if you're a Hall of Famer, you're a Hall of Famer. I don't get it. Like,
I'm giving you one, and I swear by it. I might be wrong. But I think Chris Osgood, over time, will be a Hall of Famer.
You think so? You think eventually they get there, hey? Like,
well, I think what happens is you're going to look back at once the generation is gone. You're going to go back and go, take a look at this guy's statistics. Take a look at the cups. Take a look at, and you're going, oh yeah, that makes sense. But what happened is when people recently go, oh, well, he played behind 7 Hall of Famers. That Detroit team, was so good. So they look at the context of it. But for me, time is going to make Chris Osgood a Hall of Famer because you look at his statistics, they're unreal. And so I guess that's my point is Rogie Vachon, over time, people are like, oh, yeah, that's Hall of Fame stats. That's a Hall of Famer. For me, it's like you're either yes or you're no, and you're in. And that's kind of where I think the system is flawed when it comes to the Hall of Fame.
Noodles, great stuff, buddy. You always bring it, man. We appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for having me, guys.
There you go. That's Jamie McLennan. He's the best. He's on Overdrive every afternoon, and obviously an NHL analyst over at TSN and the local guy here. Everybody loves Noodles.